What's up, people? Magnus Carlsen has been in the top of the world chess for the last 17 years, more or less, since he get the top one of the world. Until there, he doesn't lose in the same tournament the two games against the same opponent, because in many close tournaments of round robin, they play one game with white and the other game with black against the same opponent. And during these 17 years, Magnus Carlsen never lost the two games against the same guy. And this year in Norway happened that thing against praggnanandhaa, because praggnanandhaa beat him in the first game with the white pieces, and in the 8th round with black he beat Magnus Carlsen too with the French defense in a perfect game by Pragg. So let's analyze what happened with Magnus Carlsen. This is his fourth loss in this tournament. Very strange of Magnus. So let's see what happened. Okay, Magnus opened with e4, e6, d4, d5. That's the French defense. And here I always play knight c3. That's my favorite move. I really like knight c3 here. But okay, Magnus plays knight e5, which is very popular too, of course. c5 by Pragg, c3, and knight c6. What I don't like for white in this opening is that black can develop more or less easy the pieces. Rook c8, queen b6, knight here, and black pieces just... I feel like black can develop more or less easy the pieces. Okay, knight f3. And here Pragg make this sideline. It's not the main move, but okay, there are many games here, and it's a typical move in this pawn structure by black to reach f5 or just develop the knight. Because if you, of course, you cannot develop the knight to f6, and if you develop the knight to e7, this bishop is blockaded. So knight h6 is the most common move. Not in this exactly moment, but in general, it's a very normal move in this pawn structure to place the knight on c6, on h6, sorry. And here Magnus Carlsen play a very slow move with knight e3. Knight e3 is very typical too, but it's the same like the knight on g8. You cannot go to c3 because there is a pawn. If you go to d2, you are blockading your bishop. So knight c3 is the most common move, going to c2 normally. So okay, here instead of knight e3, there are other options. For example, bishop d3 and trade on h6 is a possibility, or trade on h6 directly is the not maybe hardest move and sharpest move in general. G takes, bishop b5, and it's the move who complicates more the game. Okay, now black pawn structure is damaged, but white loses his bishop pair. Bishop b5, for example, queen b6, queen e2, bishop d7, sword castle, takes. This could be a possibility. And okay, white is fine here, but I'm sure that Pragg had all of this well prepared. So okay, knight a3 is a little bit a slow move, because after takes and f6, challenging the center, black is more or less fine, just breaking the position and challenging the white center. Here, bishop a3 is a risky move, of course, given the bishop pair. And in general, I don't really like this move, because for example, knight f5, and now black have an extra pawn, but especially the absence of the dark bishop, it makes black position very hard to play. So in this type of position, lose the dark square bishop or just take a pawn used to be not enough for black. So I don't like bishop a3. The machine say that it's playable, but I don't like. Queen a5 is another possibility, just trading pieces, but the same. You are giving your dark square bishop, so I don't like to give this bishop. So I think that here white is better. So the best move of the position, f6 by Pragg. I really like f6. It takes f6, queen f6, and bishop d3. Good move, sacrificing the d4 pawn. It's very typical in this opening to sacrifice the d4 pawn. Very, very common. Bishop b4. Of course, black cannot take instantly because bishop b5. So for that reason, Pragg played first bishop b4, and then he trade on e3. He doesn't trade on e3 DLD because the bishop is worse placed on b2. For example, if you take here DLD, it's the same. Pawn takes, knight takes, and the queen is hanging. That's why he forced white to place the bishop on d2, and now he can play, and now the queen is no more under attack because there is a bishop on d2 blockading the queen. That's why he played bishop a3 first, and now knight d4, and queen e4. And now I want to stop in this position because black have an extra pawn, but okay, white have good counterplay for the pawn because have the bishop pair, and this bishop is still being very bad. Black king still being on the center, and black king in general is going to be exposed in this position, and the c8 bishop is a bad piece. But okay, black is fine. Black have an extra pawn and a solid position. Here, Magnus should decide which piece he wants to trade, because he can trade or this bishop, like he making the game, and he has the extra possibility of bishop b5. Both moves are normal. For example, bishop b5. Now, the difference is that here the king is more exposed than in the other line. But black keep this knight, which is a good piece. Now not, but when it comes to f5, it's going to be a normal piece. For example, sword castle, knight f5, and rook b8, and the machine says 0-0, but I prefer white because this king is very exposed and it's always better to play with a safer king. So yes, I really like rook b1. And yes, I prefer white in this position. So I think that bishop b5 maybe could be a better option. But okay, bishop h6 is logical too. Now queen c3. Again, you cannot take because queen bishop b5. So queen c3, important move. King f1. And now g takes h6. Rook c1, win a tempo. Queen e5. Don't take this pawn, it's not necessary. Just queen h5 and black is going to be destroyed. So better to centralize the pieces and forget a stupid pawn. Better centralize. Queen e5. Here, okay, Magnus have, for example, bishop b5, queen e4, this idea to keep the black king in the center, who I really like. By the way, black have good counterplay with queen e3 and queen f3, but I think that bishop b5 put more problems for black. Instead of that, he play h3, allowing black to go sword castle. After bishop d7, black finally goes sword castle. This king is still being a little bit exposed, but okay, at least it's not in the center. By the way, both players are making a very, very good game till here. Both are playing perfect chess, according to the machines. For the moment, it's been a very good game. I haven't so much to say. Rook e1, queen g7, rook c7. Good move, activating the pieces. Yes, the position is still being more or less balanced. Black have the extra pawn, but white is very active. Rook f7, f4 by Magnus, rook a f8, king h1, just leaving, because, okay, black could game with rook f4 one day. Now he hasn't played rook f4 yet because just rook d7, desviation the queen. But with rook f8, black is threatening rook f4 because, for example, if stupid move, rook here, and now black have the intermezzo, rook f2, and later taking the d7 rook. That's why Magnus Carlsen, with a good prophylactical mind, he played king h1, bishop e8, trying to trade pieces. Magnus trade one of them and play queen c2, attacking h7, and Magnus still playing very active. Bishop h5. Here, rook e6 is a possibility. Rook f4, bishop h7, and bishop d3 back. Or yeah, return to, for example, bishop f3, king g1. And this could be a possibility for white to take on e6, but it's very risky, of course, and needs a lot of calculation. But okay, the position after rook e6 could be more or less equal. Instead of that, he played king d2. Maybe this was the moment to play active and calculate and go for the fourth lines. But okay, king g2 is still being playable. Rook f4, queen c8, queen e6, one pawn for a one pawn and pawn straight, a soul for a soul, like Thanos said. King h8, rook f1, rook takes, Magnus take one rook, and let's see the position. Black is still having a extra pawn, but this pawn is weak, this pawn is weak. The queen is very active, this king is still being so exposed. So white can hold the position. Bishop f7, queen c8. Now let's see that this bishop is pinned. Okay, black pawns are defended, but this bishop is pinned, this king is maybe in checkmate. For example, queen b8, very good move by Magnus Carlsen, because if the queen leaves this diagonal in this square, queen e8, queen e5 is coming with checkmate. At the same time that the a7 pawn is under attack, and good play by Magnus still here. Queen b7, and here in the move 31 comes the first mistake of the game. Here the game is going perfect for both sides, but here Magnus Carlsen makes his first mistake of the game, and with a very unnatural move, because Magnus Carlsen is, okay, he's the best player in the history, but one of his better qualities is have the king safe. So very strange move, king h3 here for me. I don't really like. I prefer, for example, king g1 or king h1. King h1 is playable, but I think that king g1 is the most natural move in the position. Okay, the position is more or less balanced. If black plays king e7, like in the game, here we can take. But the problem on h3 is that in these lines the bishop is coming to e6 with check. For example, king e3 by Magnus, black play king e7, and if we take on a7, here the bishop is coming with check, and it's very annoying. That's why I prefer the king on g1, and I think that white should make a draw. I don't know if Magnus Carlsen make king h3 trying to win the game. I don't know, but the move is very strange. I think that king g1, and okay, the queen cannot leave the diagonal because there is checkmate. Black cannot advance the pawn, so he cannot move the bishop, so king here. Or king here, or just give here the check and make a draw. The two normal move, but just queen e7 looks enough. So very strange move by Magnus Carlsen, king h3, king e7, great move by Pragg, and pinning the bishop. And now the king is no more in checkmate with queen e5. Queen c7 by Magnus, bishop f7. Again, the bishop is pinned again, but at least the king is not in checkmate. Bishop d3. And here, very good move h5, and white is more or less in full one. White have no useful moves here, and simply the queen is very good on c7, and white have no useful moves. For example, a4, logic, just defending the pawn, and now came, for example, queen b6, queen f6, and queen d4. And again, it's not easy for white to play. And now with the pawn on e4, the pawn is falling. So h5 is a great move, just waiting that white moves the pawn and then making this maneuver. And the a4 pawn is hanging, and this pawn is very annoying to attack the white king. Because okay, white have extra options of queen g4. Instead of that, he played queen b6 directly instead of keep the position, but wait, queen b6 is still having advantage, but this is not so clear. Here, king g2 was the strongest move, just placing the king safe again. Instead of that, he played a4, who is an interesting plan, trying to trade pawns. As much pawns you trade with white, easier is going to make the task. Normally, when you are pawn down, you should trade as many pawns as possible, and don't trade pieces. h5, a5 again, good plan by Magnus. King g2 again was possible, but I like the Magnus Carlsen plan with a5. Queen e6, king g2, queen e3, takes. Of course, you cannot take the bishop because this pawn promotes, and this will be a draw. Takes, bishop e2, h6. Again, very good game by both players. h4, e5, because again, black have an extra pawn, but this unsafe king makes that for white is going to be not easy, but I have many resources of give 3-4 repetition. Bishop b3, queen e4, b4, queen e4, king e2. And here, after some checks, here comes the decisive mistake of Magnus Carlsen. It's true that the position was hard for him. The position was really hard for white. Now, the machine say that it's equal, but in a real game, it's very hard for white to defend here. The only move to don't receive, especially without timing the clock, the only move here to don't receive checkmate was king e2. That's the only option that white have to don't receive checkmate. King e2. That's the best move. That's because the rest of moves are just checkmate by 4. For example, king f2, just queen d2, bishop d3, and checkmate is coming. And king f4 played by Magnus in the game, queen d4, queen d3, queen d2, and now as you can hear the bishop games, and the bishop is coming. So you should keep the king as close as you can to the queen side, because if you go to the king side, black is going to trap your king. So you should keep your king in the queen side, as much closer to the queen side with king e2. That's the only move to receive checkmate. For example, just trying to keep you cannot go to the king side, because if not, you enter in the mate knight. So you should keep the king at least in the e5, and black have no way to take you out of there. So Magnus play king f4, and after this checks, he resigns because checkmate now is forced. So good game by Magnus Carlsen, and better game by praggnanandhaa, who keep during all the game good pressure by Magnus Carlsen. And I really like the game by both sides. I think that both players play a very good game. But praggnanandhaa a little bit better. and Praggnanandhaa take his second victory in the tournament against Magnus Carlsen, and Magnus Carlsen has his four loss in the tournament. So yeah, very strange to watch Magnus Carlsen losing 4 games. Let's see if he can come back in the last 2. Bye bye.